Welcome to the G3X Podcast. This is episode 11. Everything is godgymgrind unfiltered. I'm super excited because I have Liam here, who's our special guest for today's episode that we met through social media. I'm super excited to have him. He has some awesome stories to talk about when it comes to both bodybuilding and a lot of cool things in his own fitness journey. So I'm excited. Liam, thank you so much for being here. How you feeling today, man?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for having me on here.
For sure. No, thank you as well for being willing to be part of it. Super excited. To the audience, so with Liam, very similar stories to a lot of the guests I've had. We met through social media. I think I met him through Instagram, if I remember correctly. Instagram or Threads, where we originally connected. And then from there, he saw some of the other podcasts. We connected. We're like, hey, it would be awesome to have you. And here we are. So this is the first time kind of virtually speaking face to face and everything, but it's super excited. But for the audience, Liam, give yourself a little introduction, where you're from, what you do, and we take it from there, man.
Sweet. So my name's Liam Reid. I'm from New Zealand, currently studying personal training at Otago Polytechnic. Graduated from Otago University last year with a Bachelor of Science, majoring in forensics. And yeah, so I've done both bodybuilding and powerlifting, and I'm also currently the secretary and social media manager of the Otago University Lifting Club.
So there's a lot of cool things there that I wanted to talk about. So let's get into that ultimately when it comes to that right there of your, let's say, fitness journey. What ultimately got you into, let's say, that whole aspect of weight training, bodybuilding, powerlifting? What would you say was that? Was it always an interest you had, or what got you started in the first place?
So growing up as a kid, I've always been quite active in sports and whatnot, and a variety of sports, I think, as a lot of kids do during their school time. And sort of the gyms sort of started. I'd been in and out of gyms a little bit when I was younger, but then it first started when first year of university, actually, that it was sort of, you spend a lot of your time sitting down behind a computer, studying, not moving, very sedentary, just very inactive lifestyle. And it was quite a good way to go to the gym and spend an hour or two actually moving the body away from study. Just something that you can sort of do to keep active. And that was very on and off throughout that first year. And then towards the end of that year, I had quite a lot going on in the personal life, and that sort of just become quite a good outlet to spend time at the gym. It's sort of a place where you could go. You don't have to think about what's going on in your life. You've got a 2-hour slot where it's just you, the weights, and making them move.
There you go. Yep. No, 100%. I agree with you there. I remember in my old job too, it was a lot of, let's say, very fast-paced work environment. And so when I got to the gym, it was okay, 2 hours, no one called me, no one texts me, let me just focus on this, the gym, the weight. So I know that feeling. That's cool. That's super awesome. So ultimately, in a sense, you could say it was something, let's say, as sort of a distraction to be still active, which then eventually led to just becoming something that you do on a consistent basis, in a sense then, right?
Yeah, so it was sort of, to begin with, it was sort of just a method of being able to stay active. And then sort of when things started to get quite difficult in the personal life, it sort of became almost like a safe space where you knew that was always going to be a consistent part of your life, that for that 2 hours every day, you knew what to expect. There was no changes. There was no variation. It was just, that's the 2 hours where you know what's going to happen.
Nice. Beautiful. I love it. And so then what ultimately got you? Because I know, before we started the podcast recording, I know you mentioned you have a show on Saturday that you're competing. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that for powerlifting or bodybuilding? I'm assuming powerlifting. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Powerlifting, yeah.
Nice. So then as you started hitting the, that weight training kind of as an outlet, your moment of peace, let's say, right? How did that eventually evolve into you discovering hey, you know what? I really love powerlifting, getting into competitions and so forth. What drove you to
that? So this is coming up the end of my first year of powerlifting, and sort of this time last year, January last year, I'd been focusing quite a lot on squat, bench, and deadlift, and I've been really enjoying doing the three. And I'd sort of progressed them to a point where they were quite good. And I was sort of thinking at the time, I was like, okay, powerlifting incorporates those three lifts. And I was like, that could be a good way to see where I'm at. And it just happened that one of the girls in one of my classes at uni is a competitive power lifter who represents New Zealand. And so it kind of was easy to just go, hey, looking at doing this, have you got any ideas, or how do I get into this? What do I do? And she was, really, really helpful and sort of got me set up, got a program sorted, made sure that I was doing everything to comp standard, and then we sort of just went from there. So that was about May, I think, that I started. And then first comp was July. So I think it was about 12 weeks between the two-ish. And then, so he had that. And then after that comp, it was sort of like, right, when's the next one?
Nice. And you got hooked on it after that point.
Yeah.
Nice. That's so cool. So ultimately, okay, nice. So let's say, if you don't mind me asking, let's say from that point of like, say, getting into weight training, you said kind of like starting the uni. So like, how old were you then? And from now, like, how long has that been?
I think I would have been about 18, 19 at the start of uni, and then, now 21, so going on 22.
Beautiful. Nice. So like 3-4 years in the sense doing that kind of like training and like everything of that sort.
So
Beautiful.
It's been about 4 years, but this is going to be the third year of actually consistently.
Nice. Okay. Yep. Awesome. So then, as you said, you got it like towards like that year, you started getting into like squat, benching, deadlifting. Before that part, were you doing like a typical, let's say, kind of like bodybuilding split, like back and biceps, chest, or you were like always more into that like squat, benching, deadlift primarily?
So before I started powerlifting, I did 2 years of bodybuilding, and that was sort of your not necessarily traditional bodybuilding split, but more I think originally when I first started, I was on push-pull legs, as most people would relate to. But then for the majority of that time, I was doing like quads and calves, chest, shoulders and abs, and then hamstrings and calves, back and traps, and then arms.
And then that was something that you yourself created, or like, through the help of like someone kind of like training you, or like it was kind of like self-taught?
So originally when I first started the push-pull legs thing, I had a couple of mates at uni that we'd sort of all go down to the gym as a group, and we had a real basic push-pull legs. We just went in and found push movements, pull movements, and leg movements that we enjoyed and sort of did those. And then if we seen something, say, on YouTube or Instagram or whatever that we liked the look of, and our gym had that machine, we'd go and try that and go, hey, did that feel good? Did we enjoy that? And if it was a yes, that'd get added in. And then if it was a no, it was like, okay, we tried it, cool. And then that's sort of how I started for quite a while. And then over the summer, I went and seen a good friend of my family's who's ex-competitive bodybuilder and also personal trainer, and sort of sat down with him, talked through the goals, went, hey, this is what I want to achieve. What are the sort of routes to get there? And so ultimately I ended up with that split after talking to him. And then I adjusted that split based on, again, what movements I preferred, how it fitted around my lifestyle and whatnot.
Nice. No, I like that. And that's super cool because, like, for the audience too, like, and I think a lot of us start that way, where we have some help from someone, maybe some friends, maybe someone who we know that's a trainer, right? They kind of give us some kind of a program to start out. Then as you start getting more experience or start getting more comfortable with trying new stuff, you start developing, in a sense, a little bit of your own, let's say, style, what fits best for you. And I think that's the beautiful thing about fitness, that, and you tell me your opinion, is like, it's not like a one set in stone. It's like, there's certain basic things to always implement and so forth, but then it really varies per person on what works for them, their exercises, their styles, their preferences, and so forth,
Yeah. So with that split that I mentioned earlier, the one with the set out body parts, it's a very flexible schedule. So it has 2 rest days. So it's training 5 days a week, 2 rest days. But so I usually have my rest days on the Wednesday and on the Sunday, just because it means you train for 2 days, day off, train 2 days, day off, 1 day, train 2 days. And it's just a really good way to make sure you are getting the best recovery you possibly can. And it also splits out training the muscle groups too close together. Because like when you're training quads and calves, you're going to be using other aspects of your other muscles anyway. And then say training chest, you're also going to hit triceps to a degree. So you don't want to go and hit triceps the next day because now you're just adding on to that fatigue. And same with training back, is inherently training back, you've got a good chance of training your biceps to some degree as well. So it's sort of like you don't want to be training chest, back, arms, because then all of a sudden you've done technically 3 days of arms and only 1 day of your other muscle.
Yeah, that's true.
And so it's sort of like, as I said, I normally have my rest days on Wednesdays and Sundays just because those are the days that I get to create the best recovery, but they're also the days that I normally have as the busiest. So it just meant that that worked really well. The rest days, as I said, were flexible. So say I had something come up on a Monday and I was super busy, whether that be with uni or school or work or whatever. And it's like, or you just don't feel well and you're like, I'm not going to be able to get to the gym today. It's not going to work and I'm not going to benefit from going. You could move your Sunday rest day to that or move your Wednesday rest day up to the Monday and then carry on. But I'm very cautious to not have more than 2 rest days in a row unless I'm outright having a break. Like this week for tapering for Saturday, I didn't train Monday. I trained Tuesday, didn't train Wednesday, trained today, and then not training tomorrow, and then Saturday's competition day. So it's sort of like just 2 days is, if you've got 2 days in a row where you can't train, that's sort of okay. It's not too bad. But once you get to the 3rd day, a 4th day becomes easy, and then a 5th day becomes easy, and then all of a sudden it's 2 months and you haven't been to the gym.
Yeah, 100%. No, I feel that. Long time ago, I found myself in there. I'm like, okay, no. Get right back into it. Now I feel that. Now, let me ask you the following then. So, as you mentioned right now, like 21, you got your school, you got your classes, you got your training. How do you go about it then? Let's say as a 21-year-old, let's say college student, etc. How do you go about managing that, finding that, let's say, enough time to your gym to do whatever classwork or assignments you may have and just keep track of it all?
Even though it sounds kind of cliche, but like if I lost my phone, that would literally be the end of it because the best thing you can do is you've got a calendar on your phone, make the most of it. Like everything I have to do in the day is in my calendar at the scheduled time. So all my classes and where they are is inputted in my phone for every single day. Anything that's a priority that I need to do, that gets put in at a time slot. And like I'll get to a point in the year, like especially during exam season and stuff, where going to the gym's not always going to be easy because you do have to do a lot of study. You've got to lock into that. But also you can use the gym as that sort of study break as well. So in those points where I get like really, really busy, you almost treat the gym like an appointment, like a doctor's appointment or something like that, where you schedule it in and you go, that's the 2 hours of the day that I'm allocating to gym. That's it. There's nothing else that goes in that 2 hours. You do have the odd exceptions where you may have to move it, but it's like create that as a non-negotiable 2 hours, make a point of it, try and keep it consistent, and yeah, literally just book in that time and go, that is gym time, and then structure your day so you know at 9 o'clock you're doing this, at 10 o'clock you do that, 11 you do that, then you have lunch. And like if I've got big assignments and whatnot coming up, I'll look at that and go, hey, where are my big gaps in my schedule? 2 hours is going towards that assignment or whatever it is that I've got to do. But yeah,
Nice,
so
I like
essentially treat it as if it's a non-negotiable appointment that you have to go to, and it helps to sort of balance it out.
Yeah, and I'm with you there too. With the same, I'm the same with like my phone reminders and everything. Keep like putting it because otherwise it's like, oh yeah, I remember, and then you don't remember. Like like I know for example, in being like totally transparent with the audience. Let's say last week, we were discussing last week for this week to do the podcast, and I know we had, hey, let's do Wednesday, but since I had got so busy with some events that I had last week, and I never put it in my calendar. And then you message me, I'm like, hey, man. I'm like, oh, snap. And then, hey, here we are. So, like, just a perfect example. Hey, if you don't put it in your calendar, you really won't remember. I'm always all the time like calendar or reminders, like, hey, put a reminder at 3 p.m. tomorrow. So stuff like that.
Yeah, like yesterday, I had a full-on day with moving back to school and whatnot, and it's sort of like have a lot of stuff to set up. And I literally yesterday morning when I woke up, I was like, right, what do I need to get done today? And in reminders, and just I had a checklist probably about this long on my phone that was like, that's all the things I need to get done today. And as I went through the day, I added more to it and ticked stuff off when it got done. And I was like, as annoying as it might seem, it's like just taking that extra 30 seconds to write a list of what you've got to do for the day just sort of makes things so much easier. And like with my classes, particularly because they're on a static schedule, they don't change from week to week. I've got my entire semester essentially of classes already in the calendar. And it's quite good because you can just go in when you create the event, and under repeat, go custom, repeat however many times you want it to repeat or when you want it to end. And then just have it set like that. So every week it's automatically in there. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to reset or redo your calendar each week. It's just there.
Yep, 100%. I always say it's like, hey, you're paying a lot of money for these phones. Use the best you can. Like milk every little dollar and cent you spend on the phone out of it. And 100%. No, I like that. I would say you're one of the first persons I've like had in the podcast that's like mentioned that like really using like their devices to its fullest potential. And I think that's special, especially us as younger people that, let's be real, most of the time we always are on our phone. That's where everything is. And just like, what's the best way to take advantage of it? I know some people prefer writing things down and everything, but I realize that's not for me. Like, nah, if I write it down, I'm gonna lose the paper. And then what was the point? You know?
See, for me, like I've also on my calendar, I've got it set that 10 minutes before an event happens, it pops up on my phone screen saying, you have this event in 10 minutes. Or if I know I need a bit more time to get ready for it, it might be a half an hour reminder to say, hey, this is what you've got coming up next. And it's also because like having so many different locations for classes, it's really easy to forget where you're supposed to be. So if you've already got that information already there, it sort of just comes up. You look at it, go sweet as, carry on. But the other sort of reason why I like using the phone is because I use Google Calendar. So that's also linked into my laptop, my tablet, anything that accesses the internet, you can get that information. Whereas if you write it on a piece of paper, you've got, like you said, one piece of paper, you'll potentially lose it. Then you don't know where it is. And it's also just sort of a good way so you can keep track. And like, if you've got friends or family or something as well that are interested in what, like your sort of day or want to know what you're up to, you can always have like a group calendar where you can link things in with that. And part of the other reason why I use my phone is like being on the committee for the lifting club. It's sort of like we have events and committee meetings and deadlines for stuff like that. And because we use the Google Calendar for that, you can have multiple different Google Calendars stacked on top of each other. So then all of a sudden, now I can see everything I've got going on, but it's not necessarily all just my stuff. I can have like other people can add into the calendar and whatnot as well. So you can sort of always know what's going on.
Nice. Yeah, no, I think that's the best way, staying organized. And I love the fact, I think that's also super helpful. Both whoever's listening to this, younger audience, older audience, is like, hey, just be really good with your time management and whatever tools work best for you. I guess you could say there's not an excuse saying, hey, I don't have enough time. Of course, everyone has different busy life schedules. I'm not downplaying that. But whatever your priorities are, and if you're able to really have some good time management, balancing them out, like your time slots and so forth, you're able to accomplish a lot in a day than if you just kind of freestyle it for the day and you're like, okay, you kind of like lose a lot of time as you're freestyling versus if you have it thoughtfully well planned out.
Yeah, because I 100% agree with something that Tegan said in one of the earlier episodes of the podcast, is that not everyone has the same 24 hours in the day. Like, yes, everyone has 24 hours in the day, but not everyone's is the same. And it's sort of like, but the time you do have in that 24 hours, how do you make the most of it? And it's like, I'm definitely one that's guilty for procrastination and sort of like, oh yeah, I'll leave that till tomorrow, or I'll do that whenever. And it's sort of like, just by having something there that holds you accountable, and it brings up notifications, reminders, and it's like, hey, you haven't done this, or you need to do that. And it's like, it's just, unfortunately, the way that life is that you will forget things. Not everyone can remember everything. And it's like, it's also quite a nice feeling at the end of the day where you can sort of sit down before you get into bed for the night and look at your calendar or your reminders and go, hey, I did everything I needed to do today. Rather than sort of you get into bed going, there was a lot of stuff I should have done today, or I didn't do that, or now I've got to put that off, or now I've got to stay up later than I should, or I've got to get up super early the next day and try and input that time to make things happen. And it's like, but if you just used that time you did have a little bit better, you wouldn't have to necessarily impact your sleep schedule, which then again, in terms of fitness, will be detrimental to your recovery, because your 8 hours sleep is sort of your optimal recovery, and anything less than that, not ideal. But once you start getting below that 6 hour mark, it's like really starting to have negative impacts on your training. And that's sort of when your injuries start to come in, where you start to get super fatigued. You might start making silly mistakes in the gym, or forgetting to do certain parts of your technique or whatever. And then now that all leads back to that whole injury thing. And it's like, now because you had to shorten your sleep by 2 or 3 hours so you could fit something else in, you've now put yourself off the gym for 3 weeks because you're injured.
Yep. And was it worth it in the end? And also like, hey, yep, it's so true. Yep. Now, Liam, let me also ask you the following. Let's say tying it back with, let's say, your powerlifting. Let's say with your, the years you've been doing already powerlifting and so, Brian, you mentioned like the past 2-3 years, like consistently doing it. Let's say someone that's starting, wants to get started into powerlifting, right? What suggestions, advice you have for them, as they go about getting more experience, building strength, what would be your suggestions and best advice for those people wanting to get into powerlifting and such?
So for those that want to get into any form of fitness, not just powerlifting or bodybuilding, is sort of your first step is to get through the gym door. And as a lot of people on the internet will say, the heaviest weight you'll ever lift in your life is the front door of the gym. So it's like, once you get past that step of being able to go to the gym, and I know for a lot of people that could be quite scary. So if you've got friends that go to the gym already that you know of, see if you can tag along with them. Otherwise, reach out to local powerlifting clubs or whatever, if there's organizations in your area that offer those sorts of styles of training. I know the local powerlifting gym here hosts intro to powerlifting workshops, squat, bench, and deadlift technique every couple of months. There's sort of I think it's like $20 or something. You can go down there and spend 3 or 4 hours with one of the coaches, and they take you through the squat, bench, and deadlift technique, sort of help you understand what you're supposed to be doing, and just, really help you get the fundamentals. And then if something you really want to pursue, I mean, a coach is definitely a good idea, but if you can't necessarily afford a coach or don't want a coach, whatever like that, there's a lot of really good powerlifting programs on the internet you can find for free. There's quite a lot of really good basic ones. They're not necessarily going to make you a world champion overnight, but it's like they will get you into the game. They'll get you started. They'll help you start building strength. And then you can sort of get to a point where you're like, okay, I don't feel I can progress any further by myself. And then that's probably a good time to be like, hey, get a coach, maybe nutrition coach, something like that. But to be quite honest, like a lot of what the Powerlifting Association I'm associated with, they sort of say, don't worry about your first competition. Like, don't worry about weight classes or anything like that. Literally just turn up, have a good time, see if you like it. And the other one is a lot of powerlifting competitions are free to spectate. So you can go along and watch for free. And that's always a good way to be like, hey, is this an environment I want to put myself in? Go along, see what it's all about. There's usually no cost to get in, so it's not costing you anything except maybe a couple of hours of your day. You can see what the atmosphere is like, and it's honestly unless you've been to a powerlifting competition, you really can't describe the atmosphere that's at one. It's like, there could be hundreds, or some of the bigger competitions, there could be thousands of people watching. And it's like, you might only know 2 or 3 people in that group, if any, and everyone's still cheering for you. So it's like, you've got a whole heap of potential strangers that are still rooting for you to do well. So it's like, you can't really get much better of a feeling than that.
Nice. No, I agree. I agree. For example, just recently I was at the event here, Lift Miami, that Gymshark was having, and they were having those PR cages of like deadlifts, bench, and squat. So like you said, that environment is like, you can't find that in any gym, no matter what. It's like 40, 50, 100 people, whoever knows how many people were in that event, all around the cage. And let's say you're deadlifting, you're squatting, you're benching, and they're like all banging on the cage. Come on, let's go. Up, 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 like, let's go. And just that energy that you get as they're like screaming for you, and you're like, and it just gives you that like motivation to like, come on, let's do it, right? It's I know what you mean. So imagine it's having like 1,000 people or something. It's a whole different environment for sure. And that's cool. I wasn't actually even aware that you could actually just go like to like spectate like that and just, just like kind of feel out the vibe. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's something I know for New Zealand. Definitely most of our competitions are free to spectate, just go and watch. I'm not sure about the rest of the world, but I mean, spectator cost, if there is one, shouldn't be too high. The only one that I know that is fairly expensive to go to is Sheffield, but that's also your top 12 male and female powerlifters in the world, breaking records, huge money on the line. So it's like, that is like the best of the best spectacle.
Yeah. Nice. No, awesome. I love those things. And then what would you say then? I love all the advice you gave for like getting started out. What would you say maybe are some from your experience, let's say, mistakes that free beginner powerlifters tend to do that maybe you found yourself doing them as well? And hey, avoid this. It'll save you a lot of time, injuries, whatever.
Honestly, the biggest thing that I can say, and it's something that I'm really having to implement for myself at the moment, just because the way the prep's going, is trusting the process. Like, I think the last couple of weeks on my Instagram, I've talked a lot about trusting the process. Not every single week's going to be the same. Strength training is not a linear sport. You won't just start here and end up here at the end of the week or at the end of a block. Like, with the diets, depending on what diet phase you're in, whether you're cutting, whether you're bulking, whether you're maintaining, that's going to fluctuate your training. Whether you've had a decent sleep, whether you've got 6 to 8 hours sleep, that will fluctuate your training. How much, if you've eaten before you're lifting, that'll fluctuate how strong you feel in the gym. In terms of, just the way life is, if you've got a lot of stresses or external factors, that's going to impact your training. So if you're really busy with uni or work or anything that's going to take away your energy, that's going to affect your strength and your training. So it's sort of like, just trusting the process is probably the biggest piece of advice. And that if you do have a coach or you are on a program, just follow the program as best you can. Listen to your body. If it says no, you shouldn't be doing that, then probably don't. That's something I've implemented this prep, as I haven't necessarily hit every single one of the lifts that I was aiming to hit, or every single one of the weights. Some weeks I've had to drop the weight back and just feel it out and go, hey, I should be, say, doing a 160 single today, but I'm only doing a 120 because that's where my body feels comfortable right now. And just listening to your body and the cues it's giving you, because that's the best telltale factor of when you're due for an injury, is your body will give you a lot of signs before you get injured that, hey, I'm not liking this. Like, you might end up with real tight muscles or something that's real stiff, or a clicky shoulder or something like that. That's all sort of your body saying, hey, I'm a bit vulnerable here. I'm not feeling 100%. If we keep training in this manner, we're going to end up injured. And it's quite, I wouldn't say it's funny, because it's actually quite sad, but like, the amount of people that I've seen that are always talking about those cues and always saying, hey, like, this is not feeling great, that's not feeling great, whatever, and then they're still pushing on at the same intensity they would have been otherwise, And then they come back the next week with a major injury and they're like, why did I get injured? And that's like, well, it's like your body was telling you for the last couple of weeks that, hey, maybe this exercise
something's a little
is
off.
not. And it's like, it's not necessarily the exercises itself. Like, I mean, everyone will have the exercises they prefer. There's other exercises that people don't necessarily like, but they need to be done, like Bulgarian split squats, good mornings, just to name a few things that a lot of people don't particularly like the exercises, but they do wonders for you. And then you've got the exercises that just don't feel right. So I know a lot of people that will prefer to use machines over barbells because they don't have the correct flexibility to use a barbell. So they're using alternative machines and whatnot to get the same effects.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And like we were discussing earlier, how that, sorry, not to cut you off, how you were saying earlier, you know, like how every person is different for their styles of training. But go ahead, what were you going to say?
But yeah, so it's sort of like, you've just got to work out what works for you. It's like, and that's what I was saying, is like, yes, you can get a lot of free programs on the internet, but you've got to adapt it to, they're a good basic. You can't sort of follow it to the letter T because that may not be, one may not meet your goal, may not be your style of training, and your body just may not like the way it is or the way those exercises are. So it's sort of like, you've got to find what works for you. And once it works for you, then you need to stick with anything like that for at least 4 to 6 weeks, because the body takes a minimum of 4 weeks to start changing. And you probably won't see any form of results until about 6 weeks. In about 4 weeks, you'll sort of feel, hey, you can start to feel whether it's good or not. And then at about 6 weeks, you can sort of start to see those results. If there are any there, you may not get results from what you're doing because that may not be the sort of stimulus you require for what you're doing. But it's sort of like, you've got to wait it out. You've got to give, if you're going to put an exercise in your split, you've got to give it at least 4 to 6 weeks to actually make its impact on your training, which is where, I mean, yes, you could try an exercise out, do an exercise 1 week and try it out. Yeah, that's cool to sort of be like, hey, does that feel good? Does that sort of suit what I'm doing? That's cool. But if you're genuinely looking to see, hey, does this exercise give me results? You've got to give it enough of a chance to give you those results.
Yep.
And
exactly.
Like, there might be an exercise you want to do, say something with a barbell, but you don't necessarily have the flexibility to do that exercise. You can identify that, so you can try that exercise 1 week and go, hey, that really doesn't feel right. I'm not got the flexibility for that, but I do like that exercise. So that means now you know, okay, you need to improve the flexibility aspect of your training, whether that's your shoulders, hips, whatever, and then you can target those muscles to get that flexibility going, and then you can sort of go back again in sort of that 4 to 6 weeks of training the flexibility and go, hey, is there any improvement? Can I now do that exercise that I originally wanted to do? And now it means that you've actually identified that your body said, no, I don't like this exercise. It feels wrong. So now that you've gone and focused on the flexibility aspect of it, you're preventing any form of injury that you would have got if you just soldiered on through and tried to do the exercise anyway.
Yep. No, love it. Beautiful. Well said. And I love how very detailed you are about it. And I can tell you're and that's important, especially in the whole fitness journey. I love it. I also want to ask you a few other things too. Now, let's say into your, as you mentioned earlier, in the lifting club committee, how you're the social media manager. I also want to get into that. How did you get involved in that role? How has it been for you in that sense of content creation? Of course, there's a lot of people our age, 21s, 22s, 23s, etc., that probably want to get into that content creation or into that space. So how has that experience been for you and everything?
So yeah, I've been doing content creation and fitness stuff sort of on my own personal page since December of 2023, and sort of middle of last year, the president of the lifting club, because we established the club last year. So it's sort of a new startup. He was proposed it and he got it going. And then I sort of attended their initial meeting because I was like, hey, when I found out that they'd started that, I'd actually been thinking around that time. I'm like, hey, the uni's not really got anything in terms of fitness gym, sort of that whole environment where getting people into the gym, a place where, because I mean, our university and Polytech has this massive gym and people go there during the day and that's cool. But it's like, there's huge big groups of people. So like there's all the powerlifters go at a certain time, the bodybuilders go at a certain time, the Olympic weightlifters go at a certain time. So it's like there's already these big established groups of people, but there's like not a lot of interaction between them. So also like how do we make it so all these groups of people can share information, get to know each other, and just help everyone out? And it was like, so he approached me about it, was like, hey, he's like, you already do social media, you already have a fitness account, you're already doing all of that sort of stuff. Are you interested in helping out with that? Or are you interested in running our social media pages? And I was like, yeah, that's cool. I'm happy to do that. And it's like, for me, as I said before about the whole time management thing, for me to do, I'm already doing content creation during every day pretty much anyway. So I'm already doing my own personal account and all that sort of stuff. So all it means for me in terms of doing the social media for the lifting club is just adding, say, another 20 minutes, half an hour a day onto what I'm already doing and just getting through that stuff as well. So I'm already doing it during the day. So it was like, all I'm doing is just adding to what I'm already doing. So it might take 20 minutes, half an hour more, but it's like, I'm already doing it anyway. So it's like, it's just as easy to do that.
Nice,
and it's a lot of, and there's a lot of overlap as well with the two things as well. So it's like, it makes it quite easy. And also I've got a team of others that help out with the social media side as well. So it's not necessarily all me doing everything. Like I've got a couple of people that help out with videoing and photography and editing and stuff like that. So there's a group of us that are all collaborating together to make it happen. It's sort of just, I'm kind of just doing the main chunk of what we're doing, but it's also quite good because I can delegate out to the other people and be like, hey, can you guys do this? Can you help with that? Because we've got our big tent day coming up, which is sort of our clubs day for the uni where all the new people to the university come through. They get to see all the clubs, everything that's on offer. And then we've got our first lifting event for the club on the 28th. And there's a lot of admin and a lot of advertising and work that's got to be done for that. So it's quite good to be able to have a group of people that you can be like, hey, can you guys get this part sorted? Can you guys get that part sorted? And it sort of just helps take that stress away from that.
Okay, beautiful. Nice. Love it. And that's super dope. And I think that's cool. Having like a team that also like, you're all collaborating is like super cool, and much success to you on that. Keep crushing it. Like you said, you already have the experience of your own content. It's not that hard to like do some more. And if you have a team around and everything, so that's awesome. Love it. Now, let me ask you the following there too. I also know you mentioned it in the form, and that was actually pretty cool. How you mentioned the race car driving aspect. That really caught my attention. I thought that was like super cool, and how you incorporate that in like your training. So talk to me about that. When you fill that on the form, I'm like, hey, that's super cool actually. So just talk to me about that.
Yeah. So with the whole race car driving thing, it's like, it's a fitness in itself. Like you could be physically fit, you could be strong, you could do all the cardio in the world, and that sort of still won't prepare you for driving race cars. So it's high G forces, and because it's run on dirt, like there's ruts and bumps and stuff like that, there's a concrete wall on the outside. So if you hit that, it hurts. And it's sort of just a different style of training. So like, yes, you need to be quite fit and strong. It's not the be all and end all, but it definitely helps. And by having that muscle as well, sort of helps to absorb any of the impact of the crashes and stuff like that. But predominantly, there's definitely a lot of leg strength involved in terms of braking. Is depending on what sort of cars you're racing. Like I know Formula One drivers put anywhere up to about 70 kilos of pressure on the brake pedal. And most of those guys only weigh about 70 to 80 kilos. So they're essentially exerting their whole weight force of their body into a singular pedal to stop a car that's going super high speeds. So it's like you've got to have strong sort of, especially ankles, but like legs to be able to put that force down. Wrist and forearm strength is crucial. You're holding onto a steering wheel. And so that's sort of the thing that's going to keep you safe and get you out of the way if there's problems. So it's like you've got to be able to hold on to it and keep a good grip on it. But you also don't want your forearms fatiguing as well, especially when you get longer races. You're holding on to something for a long time, you will fatigue. And it's like, say you hold 2 kilo dumbbells, it's like, and you just hold them, that might not seem like a lot. And for the first 5 or so minutes, like that might be, hey, that's not a problem. But as you get to like the half an hour to an hour, you're going to be like, this is only 2 kilos, but 2 kilos is starting to feel a lot heavier than 2 kilos was half an hour ago. So it's like just being able to keep that grip strength, but also not have your forearms fatigue, which is sort of a weird concept because you want to be using the muscles, but you don't want them getting tired. And that sort of seems like the opposite of what everyone talks about in fitness, is that you use your muscles, you'll get tired, they'll fatigue. So that's where sort of that other side of fitness comes through, that it's like, you're not necessarily, it's not a traditional fitness sort of thing. And also neck strength is probably a big one, is with bumps and stuff like that, crashes, all of that, your head does get thrown around quite a bit. So having the neck strength to sort of handle that force that's being exerted on the body. And because essentially with a lot of race cars, a lot of the ones now they're sort of designed to collapse around you, but some of the other styles of race cars are a bit more rigid. The weakest link in the vehicle is the thing that's going to break, and the weakest link is usually the human that's inside it. So it's like you want to sort of build yourself so that you can withstand that, and you're not going to get injured from it, but you're also not going to get fatigued super fast.
Wow, there's a lot of things involved. I love that. Like, I think that's one of the most detailed explanations of the whole race car driving that I've personally have experienced, right? Because I don't have much friends or anything that are like into it. So that's like super cool. You know, that goes, all the things that goes behind the scenes of the whole race car driving. It's not how people think. It's like, oh, it's just some guy going fast in a car. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah, and depending on what sort of racing you're doing, there is a body weight element as well. So you want to be as masculine or as much muscle as possible on your frame, but under a certain body weight. Because I know particularly for the Formula One drivers, those guys have to have as much muscle as they can sort of thing, but they also have to be under a certain weight limit. So by having that muscle and limiting the fat, they can sort of regulate their body weight a lot better than if they just had the fat there, because that is quite hard to sort of put on and off when you need to, whereas you can sort of tactically atrophy your muscles if you're too heavy. But it's not really something you want to do, but there is always that option if you have to do it, whereas otherwise you sort of end up doing a lot of calorie deficit and you end up doing quite a bit of cardio and a lot of stuff to try and burn off a lot of fat. And that's not fun for anybody.
Now, let me ask you this other question, Liam. It's been super awesome, super great conversation. I love everything you've been talking about. I know another thing I also wanted to touch on before wrapping up here is, I know you mentioned you're working also in a supplement store. And that was actually super cool because I found that interesting in the sense, like, from your experience there at the supplement store, I know when it comes to like supplements, bodybuilding, powerlifting, right, there's a lot of like, let's say, do this, try this is the best, or no, don't take that, that's etc. What would you say are some of the common misconceptions about supplements that you often encounter?
So in terms of supplements, there's 3 main supplements that you sort of want to look at. There is an optional 4th that if you want to use it, you can. And the other thing is supplements are optional. You don't need them to get progress in the gym. I know a lot of people, I'm friends with a lot of people that they only use whole foods. They don't use any form of supplements and they look amazing. They have great physiques and they're really strong. So it's not to say that you have to use supplements to get results, because you don't. But essentially, if you were to come into the supplement store and be like, hey, I'm brand new and I don't know what I should be taking, sort of first thing that any good person in a supplement store will say is, hey, what are your goals? And the biggest thing you can do for yourself, and as well as the employee that's helping you, is when you go into a supplement store to get help or advice, at least know your goals or have an idea of what you want to achieve. It will make the recommendations you get a lot easier, so we sort of know what we should be recommending to you, where to go and what to do. If you come in and like, oh yeah, I just started at the gym, I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know what to take. And it's like, now we've got to spend time going through all these questions to ask you, be like, hey, are you trying to build muscle? Are you trying to lose fat? Are you trying to do this? Are you trying to do that? Blah, 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 blah. And now it makes the whole interaction quite drawn out, and we may not be able to get you what you need for your goals because we don't have that information. So essentially, yeah, have an idea of your goals when you come into a supplement store, or at least just be like, hey, the real basic, I want to build muscle, lose some weight or lose some fat, and build some strength. And then the three things that you should be looking at taking: firstly, protein powder, whether that be whey protein, isolate, or plant-based protein. Secondly is creatine. And then, so that's whether that's monohydrate or hydrochloride. And then thirdly, pre-workout. If that's something you want to use, you don't have to have a pre-workout, but it's definitely something that helps with your workouts, overall energy, and also not a lot of people know, but pre-workouts is more than just caffeine. Is it actually helps to sort of prime the muscles for movement and help prevent fatigue. Like beta-alanine is really good to help prevent lactic acid build up in your muscles. Means you can train longer before your muscles start to burn and stuff like that. The fourth one, which I'd say is pretty optional, would be BCAAs. If you're getting enough protein, if you're hitting your protein target throughout the day, you're going to be getting a lot of your BCAAs and whatnot anyway, so you don't need to supplement them. But that's always a good thing. I have a lot of friends that I know that don't like drinking water during their workouts, so they have some flavored BCAAs because it's something that's not water they can drink throughout a workout. And they're more inclined to get their water intake during the workout because it's something they enjoy drinking rather than just plain old water. And so that's probably the first one. Second thing is fat burners. If you want to lose fat, calorie deficit all the way. The amount of people that come into a supplement store looking for the magic pill, they're like, I want this one magic pill that fixes all my problems. It makes me super lean and skinny. It helps build me lots of muscle and makes me super strong. It's like, I'm sorry to break it to you, but there is no magic pill. And you can take all the supplements in the world and you may still never reach your goals, because if you're not putting in the hard work in the gym, you're not eating the right foods and getting the diet sorted and recovering well, which is probably the biggest component of it, you're not going to get anywhere. So it's like, if you're going to use fat burners, I'm not saying they don't work, but at the end of the day, they, as all the things in the stores are supplements. They're there to aid and to supplement either something you're missing or help you push past that edge that you might not quite be able to break through. So I know I've used fat burners and I've had quite a lot of success with them. In terms of also alongside with using the fat burners is also a calorie deficit, doing at least an hour of cardio a day, training with weights and training as heavy as you possibly can in the calorie deficit without injuring yourself and without overworking, but making sure you maintain that muscle mass. Because at the end of the day, the easiest and fastest way to burn fat is to build muscle, because your muscles use a lot more energy and they consume a lot of energy at rest throughout the day. So the more muscle you have on, the quicker and easier you'll burn that fat. So if you prioritize building muscle rather than just losing weight, you're going to lose that weight inherently anyway. And sort of the other one that's quite common is we get a lot of people, especially young people and predominantly teenagers, come in and they're wanting mass gainers. And it's like, I tend to steer people away from mass gainers unless they have an absolute reason to need them. Because the problem with a mass gainer is a lot of mass gainers are up around that 1,000 to 2,000 calorie mark, per serving, and you're only getting, on average, between 50 to 80 grams of protein for 2,000 calories, or 1,100 to 2,000 calories, for example. So it's like, okay, say you're only on 3,000 calories a day, and you have a mass gainer that's 1,100 calories and only 56 grams of protein. Well, you've already used nearly half your calories for the day, and you haven't even hit a third of your protein goal for the day. And now you've got to try and find all this extra protein and all the rest of your macros inside a lot less food. So typically when people come in and they're like, hey, I want to build muscle, put on mass, blah, 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 it's like, what are you currently eating? How much are you currently eating? And most of the time, they're not eating anywhere near enough to even get close to putting on muscle. Like, most people are barely eating at their maintenance. And so it's like, hey, how about you up your food intake and eat whole foods before you start using mass gainers? Because at the end of the day, a mass gainer is being a liquid. It's only going to, yes, it might be 1,100 calories, but that's only going to fulfill you for the time it takes you to get rid of it. So you're only going to be full for the time liquid's in your system, and liquid doesn't typically stay in your system for very long. Whereas your whole foods, if you're eating your whole foods, they're going to stay in your system a lot longer and give you more sustained energy. And it's also going to basically make you feel a lot better, because otherwise you're going to feel bloated all the time with a lot of liquid. And also it's just not really fun. You're essentially putting yourself into a gut cut for no reason, which you'd sort of only really be using a gut cut and using liquid protein shakes and stuff like that if you were trying to make weight for powerlifting or wrestling or some sort of weight class sport that you had to meet weight for. Otherwise, it's like, why would you predominantly have liquids when the human body is designed to eat whole foods?
Yep. No, 100%. I remember having a friend of mine that recently got into like those mass gainers, but I'm like, you could just probably do that through foods, if you're not eating normal, like, because it was like a struggle for her to eat. And so I was like, hey, but I mean, I get the mass gainer, but that's not really gonna like help as much as you might think, right? Because you're still like, there's a lot of other like macros involved with it. And in the end, it wasn't something that was able to be sustainable for them in the long run. Like, they couldn't handle it. So I agree with you there. So this is easier through natural foods more than anything. Yep.
Because see, like, for example, for me, as I was saying before, like, there's a mass gainer that you can get. It's 1,100 calories, 56 grams of protein for a serving. That's cool. The protein powder I use is an isolate protein. It's 110 calories and 25 grams of protein per day. So I can have two of those, be it 50 grams of protein and 200 calories, versus someone who's at 1,100 calories for 6 grams of protein more. They've got 900 calories, so to say, to play with for the rest of their food, and I've still got, say, like 1,200.
Yep.
So it's like,
Exactly.
I've got a lot more room to fill up with other stuff, and I'm still hitting my protein target. I'm still getting in what I need, but I'm also able to eat more whole foods.
Yep. I love it. Now, Liam, it's been super, super awesome having you on this podcast. Love all the topics we discussed, from powerlifting, balancing, to time management, social media, and even like here, as we were discussing with the supplements. Now, if there was one final piece of advice, I always like to end the podcast with this with every guest. If there was one piece of advice or one final thing that you can leave the audience with, what would that be as, like, let's say, your final words of this podcast?
So essentially, as I've already covered a few times throughout the podcast and on my social media pages, is trust the process. If your coach or your personal trainer has given you a program, they've given it to you for a reason, and that's going to achieve your goals. And essentially, so it's just like, just focus on controlling what you can control. Making sure you're getting the food in, you're getting the sleep in, you're drinking your water, or you're getting your fluids in, and you're lifting to the best of your ability. If you can only give 40% on a day, as long as you give 40%, like, you've still given 100% in the long term. So yeah, it's like, just trust the process and the results will follow, because fitness is not a linear sport or a linear lifestyle.
Facts. Well said, Liam. Well said, guys. And that would conclude episode 11 of the G3X podcast, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Liam, thank you so much for being the guest. It was awesome having you. Truly, truly. I loved our conversation. We got to do more of this in the future for sure. I love your knowledge, how you explain things. You can tell you're passionate and, you've taken the time to actually learn and know what you're saying. So I really love that. If the audience wanted to find you on social media, what social media platforms are you on? Where can they follow you?
So at the moment, I'm mainly on Instagram and TikTok, and that is at _Liam.lifts_ on both Instagram and TikTok.
Beautiful, guys. And I'll make sure if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the description below. So please check that out and give them a follow. If you're watching or listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you also see it in the description there. So you guys can give Liam a follow. Super awesome guy. So definitely go support him too. He's been awesome. And once again, Liam, thank you so much. Until next time, when we have our future episode, appreciate everyone listening to it. Drop us a review, leave us a comment of your thoughts on this podcast. And until the next episode, peace out, everyone. And as we like to say here at G3X Fitness, God Gym Grind.